Hello YouTube and welcome to the nation of free to play. I'm Mr. Mondstadt and today I want to give some F2P tips and tricks on how to clear any Imaginarium Theatre. Let's go! By now the Imaginarium Theatre is an established endgame mode in Genshin and resets on the 1st of every month. Every season consists of 6 starter characters and a total of 3 elements, plus 4 special guest stars. The last season had Pyro, Hydro and Anemo, while the current one in March has Electro, Hydro and Cryo. Unlike Spiral Abyss, this game mode requires more characters to get the max rewards and your teams can look pretty random most of the time. Before I start, some quick disclaimers. First, this video works for all the difficulties, whether you only have a few build characters or you basically have every unit in the game, the tips stay the same. However, I strongly recommend any F2P player to not impulse build multiple units just so you can play the visionary mode for the extra primos. Build the units you want to play and use regardless of the Imaginarium Theatre. The resin and resources it takes to get a character up and running are actually more valuable than 180 extra primogems. Second, overall I think the Imaginarium Theatre is not quite as difficult as Spiral Abyss, but especially if you're not familiar with the mode, it can be annoying to complete. However, there are still some juicy rewards to claim from it, so let's get going with the first tip. Look at the boss opponents first. This should be obvious, but a lot of players don't look up the boss opponents you have to fight in Act 3, 6, 8 and 10. Most of the time, one or multiple of these enemies require a certain element to defeat in time, and you want to know who you want to use when. There's no point in using your strongest DPS right away only to find out that you needed them for the end. So make sure you know about the different acts. Tip number 2. Use as many units as you can. Even if not all of your characters have a good build, leveled up talents or even a weapon, as long as they have the required level, use them all the same. And by using, I mean put them in your lineup. The more units you have, the more buffs you get at the beginning of your performance, and usually you don't even have to actually use them in combat at all. Tip number 3. Invite a friend's character. For each performance you can invite one character from a friend. Whether your friend is F2P or a whale with C6 units does not matter, so choose one character that you don't own yourself and put them in your lineup. Also put your own units as potential support units for your friends as well. Tip number 4. Get new units when you can. In Imaginarium Theatre you start with the 6 starter characters and then you get one new character from your lineup after each completed act. Since every character can only be used twice and you always have to use 4 characters per act, you can run out of options rather quickly. You don't want to end up using your 4 DPSs all at once just because you don't have anyone else to use. Therefore, use your Fantasia flowers to invite more characters to your lineup if you have the chance. This way you're way more flexible when it comes to choosing your teams and you don't have to waste your best options. Tip number 5. Don't choose/use your best units too early. Depending on how many acts you have to complete, you don't want to use your elite builds too early. Especially in hard or visionary mode, the acts get more and more difficult and you want to be able to use your best damage dealers for these challenges. The first 2 acts are usually easy enough that you can clear them with the starter units only. So in praxis, this means even though you have the option to choose more Lani or more Wika, maybe you shouldn't just yet. Maybe it's better to use Candice or Daya first while they are still useful and choose your good units later when you actually need them. Tip number 6. Don't worry about the coins. Unlike Spiral Abyss, the time in which you clear an act does not affect the rewards. As long as you complete the performance, you will be able to claim your primos from Wolfie, whether you get 10 coins or none. So don't stress out about it and just focus on defeating the opponents. Tip number 7. Use the right brilliant blessings. While having a couple of cast members to choose from is the priority, you will probably have more Fantasia flowers to use. Here is when the blessing cards come into play. But which elemental reaction buffs should you choose? Well, in my opinion, it should always be the strongest available reaction, and you should try to max that one out as fast as possible. In the last season we had Pyro, Hydro and Anemo, so the strongest reaction was Vaporize. Hydro and Pyro Swirl can be nice, but will not have as great of an impact as Pyro and Hydro combined. So I upgraded the Vaporize reaction to the max as soon as I could, and from then on the enemies were a walk in the park. So make sure you use these buffs to your advantage, as they increase your damage output by a lot. Tip number 8. Build your units to their individual max potential. When it comes to artifact sets or weapons, you should focus on the max potential you can give to your character. This is different from Spiral Abyss. Let me explain. In Abyss, you know what team comp you're gonna end up playing, so you can give each support their best set/weapon for this specific team. One example would be Thrilling Tales on a Catalyst that you can run with an attack scaling DPS. Another example would be Bennett on Instructor, since you already have another Noblesse user in the party. Xylonen on Archaic Petra instead of the hero set if you run her with Citlali or Auroron. While I do recommend this strategy for Spiral Abyss in order to min-max your damage, I do not advise you to do the same for Imaginarium Theatre. The reason for that is simple. You don't know what teams you're gonna get and who has to work with who. If you have to run a Catalyst with Novi or Hutao, TTDS is gonna be wasted. If you have Xylonen on Petra but never run her with another Natlan unit, you will miss out a lot of damage because nobody runs the hero set. So it is best to equip every cast member with their standalone best in slot gear. Tip number 9. Use the mystery free cash. These cards are either free or cheaper and can restore vigor to already used characters if you're lucky, so don't ignore them, they might make the difference for your performance. Tip number 10. Choose the easiest opponents possible and reroll if necessary. While you cannot change the boss opponents, the other acts are kinda random when it comes to the enemies you have to fight. And believe me when I tell you, they are not all the same difficulty. One example is the Protect the Monolith challenge. If you have to fight many small enemies at once, this can be super tricky to pull off, especially without any form of grouping. Meanwhile, if you have to fight, let's say, Rune Guards, only one will spawn at a time. They are super slow and often don't even attack the monolith in the first place. You will have a very chill time with this challenge and can even use some of your worst cast members to complete this act. And this is true for most of the acts. So don't just blindly click the first option you see, but think about your current cast members and the enemies. Are there resistances? Do I need grouping? Who will I play against them? Think first, click later, and you'll have a much easier time. And if all of the enemy options are bad, just reroll once. If you combine all of these tips and your characters have the required level, you should have a pretty easy time in your next Imaginarium Theatre performance. Personally, my only struggle is that I don't have that many build units for every element, so I'm usually stuck with the hard mode. I think that some changes regarding that topic could definitely improve Genshin's latest endgame mode, but that's just my opinion. What are your thoughts? Do you prefer Abyss or Imaginarium Theatre, and why? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Also, if you liked this video, please leave a like or subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!